Greetings, greetings, greetings. Happy holidays. Thanks for joining me today. How are you, everyone? I see Jackie is here from Aloha, and I happen to be in Ashland, Oregon. So thanks so much for joining me as people come on in. Say hello in the chat box if you're able to, and we will get started. So today is day 6 of my 12-day series that I'm patterning after the 12 days of Christmas. This is the 12 days of DrawPaintMas. So every day we're drawing and or painting something different, something from the holidays or Christmas or just the winter season. And so you can watch all of those previous ones on my YouTube channel under the live streams tab and on Facebook. So I know some of you have been joining me every day, and some may be new. So today we are doing a beautiful tree, and we are going to add an ornament like this. Oh, that's right. I was going to wear these ornaments as earrings today. I would do that, but they make too much noise. Yes. I don't know, Jackie, I don't know what day it is. Is it 6 or 7? Who knows? So you may have joined me for poinsettias and 2 turtle doves and holly and the snowy owl. And tomorrow is another animal that lives in the same habitat as the plant we're doing today, the balsam fir. And so tomorrow is the Arctic hare. And that's a very beautiful rabbit. It's a white rabbit. And we're not going to be painting tomorrow. We're going to be working in a white charcoal pencil on gray paper to look like the gray rocks and the snow where this hare lives. Okay, so anyway, let's see. I'm going to move these things. I got some beautiful seasonal berries here that I picked. And since I happen to be in the oak woodland habitat, which is different than the pine forests I'm usually in, I was able to find some fresh mistletoe. And this will be the subject for New Year's Eve. If I'm able to go live, I will. Otherwise, I have a recording of drawing and painting the mistletoe, which has a lot of traditions associated with it. And it's also very important to wildlife. In fact, right now it's got its little pink berries on it, and these berries are important for birds. So I happen to pick that up today, and I've got a cute little Santa here. So I'm going to move those things over. Well, actually, I could keep them over here so they could decorate the edge here. Why don't we do that? And I'm fighting a little cold today. I've been fighting it for a while. So my chosen beverage today is this English breakfast tea. I'm not sure what you are drinking today, but that's what I'm drinking. All righty. And so whether or not you're ready to paint or draw together with me, that's okay. You can just watch. I'm going to start by sharing some information about the plant we're drawing, and then we're going to draw it in pencil, and I'll share those supplies in a moment. But anyway, so we are drawing the beautiful fir. Let me get this here. Oh, no, let me get this picture here if I can find it. Let's see. There it is. Okay, so we are drawing this beautiful balsam fir with a really pretty bauble or shiny ornament hanging from it. So the balsam fir is a beautiful fir that grows in pretty much eastern Canada and parts of the eastern United States. And it's a very popular Christmas tree. That's one of the reasons we're drawing it today. It has a wonderful scent and a really beautiful conical shape. And it's known for being able to hold its needles for a really long time. Now, this is a true fir, so it's not like our local Douglas fir, which is in a different genus. The true firs are in the genus Abies, and they all have cones that are upright. So you see these beautiful cones that are on top of the branch instead of hanging pendant down like we're used to with the Douglas firs and the spruces and the other pine trees. So Cindy says you always get a balsam fir for Christmas in New Hampshire, right? So they are more popular on the East Coast because that's more where they live. They're not out here in the Western United States or Western Canada. And so most often they are cut from the wild. I read that they're not really grown in plantations that much. But so Cindy, I'm so excited that you get to draw and or paint this tree. And so another way firs are different than other members of the pine family is that their cones are not only upright, but they disintegrate on the branch. So they don't fall down like pine cones do onto the ground. All the little scales totally open up and disintegrate, and the winged seed flies away in the air. So they're wind dispersed. And so that's different than pines and spruces, for example. And these guys happen to have a really beautiful purple cone. And of course, this is the female cone. The male cone is different. It does hang down, and it's the one that has pollen, which sometimes, people are allergic to certain kinds of tree pollens. But this tree is really important to the wildlife. It grows very extensively in the north of Canada, and it's super cold hardy. It's about the most cold hardy of all of the pines, so it can grow where other firs, that is, where other firs can't grow. And it's really important for giving shelter and food to things like moose and deer, and they eat the needles. And the needles were also eaten and made into a tea by Native Americans. They have a really high vitamin C content, so they're really good for you. And then the cone seeds are really nutritious as well. And lots of animals, including those Arctic hares and red squirrels, grouse, mice, are going to eat those seeds. So yeah, they're really important. What else? Oh yes, I read that the seeds are also eaten by the Io moth, which is a very beautiful large moth in the East Coast. And they are short-lived tree only to about 200 years because a lot of members of the pine family can grow many, many hundreds of years. And then we see the needles. They're different also than pines in that there's only one needle. They're not in groups or fascicles of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 like the pine trees. So they're individual. And if you're lucky enough to get a needle like a Cindy, you might have the tree. Do you have your tree already, Cindy? If you have your tree, you can take off a little needle and you'll see that it has a round base and it kind of pops off really interestingly. Anyway, so now I'm going to talk about the materials I'm going to use. But again, don't worry if you don't have any materials. You can use learn a lot just by watching, and then you can always watch the replay. But I'm using this. Oh yeah, let me switch here to this other view. There we go. So I'm using this watercolor paper. Now, I did a first version on a hot press watercolor paper. This is my first version. I often do several versions of things. And just for fun, I'm going to try this other watercolor paper that has a little bit more of a tooth to it and is the most common kind of cold press medium weight paper that most people have. Okay, and then I'm going to have a few different brushes. And your brush size is important. It should match the size of your paper. That's another reason I switched to a little smaller paper because this paper was just a little bit too big for the size of brushes I had. And so I didn't want to do a lot of scrubbing. So you want to match the size of your brush to the size of your drawing. And I have a few different brushes here. Mainly, I'm just going to use this bigger round brush. And I'm going to want maybe a thinner brush for my needles. I've got so many materials here. Maybe a thinner brush for my needles. And then I've got my watercolors, and I've already been playing with those. Now, some people find watercolors intimidating. And I was just chatting with one of my students yesterday. I do one-on-one coaching calls with my students inside the Nature Notebook Club. I'm sure you've heard me talk about this, and I'd love to have people join. But anyway, we were talking about kind of like trying to tackle one thing at a time. Just like if you're going to do like if you're practicing to do be in a band, you're playing flute or something. You wouldn't just bring your flute out and play in the concert first. You would practice doing your scales, or like they do in piano and all that kind of thing. So I like to break things down by just different parts. So for one, I like to just see what colors I'm going to use. And again, we've got some greens and purples, and then the red of the, I don't know if I can get this. There we go. So we have the beautiful purple cones and some greenish blue needles. And then the the bauble I'm going to have hanging. And so that is, that's where I'm going to kind of think about my colors. I've got too many pieces of paper. Here we go. So I will do swatches of my colors, because they can look, really different here than they do swatched. And I do have swatches of them on the lids, but I can't close the lid and look when I've got it all wet. So that helps me just to first think about the colors I'm going to use. And then I like to think about my my thumbnail of how I'm going to design my painting. So, you might have reference photos like the ones I'm showing you right now, or, you might be out in the forest doing some sketching. And usually I would make a few different thumbnails like this. So I would make some shapes that are kind of the same shape as my paper, just a little bit longer than wide. And then I would kind of think about how I want, here it goes, how I want my design to be, because I want a couple cones and the branch and the bauble, and where are those going to be? So, I tried a few different ones with a branch here and a bauble there and a couple baubles on the side and the branch in the middle. But I decided on doing this. So I'm going to kind of do a branch going down kind of at an angle with the cone, and then over here the bauble. And I think that kind of gives it a balanced look. Here we go again. And I actually added a second cone. So there's three things here, which often people like art in groups of three. So that's the second part. I will kind of think about where I'm going to have everything. And then, when I start to figure out my paints and my brushes, then I might do some practice with my brushes. So I might get my water here, and I don't know, you can't really see everything. It's a little bit hard to see everything here. Might as well make this bigger. So the next thing I might practice with which brush I'm going to use. So practicing kind of some strokes and seeing like, is this going to be a good brush, for maybe my branch? And can I make this brush small enough for the needles? Maybe not. So maybe I'll want this other brush, more for the needles. And I might just practice here. So I'm always doing kind of breaking apart the project into pieces, so it's not as intimidating, right? So we've thought about our thumbnail sketches. We've gotten some swatches of our colors. And then we've practiced with how we're going to use the brush, the different strokes, and which brush we're using. Okay, and we got plenty of water here. Let's see. One other material I'm going to have is this white charcoal pencil because we're going to look at the cones and the spirals on the cones. So we're just going to paint the oval of the purple cone, and then we're going to add the spirals with the white charcoal pencil. Of course, you could use other things too. There's a variety of different kinds of opaque pens you can use, or you could even use my favorite Dr. Bronner's, but I think I'm going to save that for the snow because it's super white. So yeah. And then one more thing about the cones is it's something really fun to notice. You may have taken one of my classes before where we drew pine cones, but basically cones have a really interesting spiral pattern. It's not just an X. You're not kind of going like this to make the bracts, because a cone is divided up into these bracts, and inside of the bract is attached each little seed with its wing on it. Okay, kind of like that. That's a mess. So anyway, it looks a little bit different. So actually, there's going to be one spiral that's going to be kind of a little bit shallower. I'll make this really dark so you can see it. So that's at one angle, but the other angle is going to be steeper, and it's going to kind of go around like this. So you see how that looks different than just doing an X with each angle being the same, right? So that's how cones are built. It's a long story about the Fibonacci numbers and the golden mean and all that. I've talked about that before this fall when we were sketching during my weekend sketching classes. So anyway, that's what we're going to do with that. Okay, so now we're ready to draw. And so I'm going to, let's see. There's no way for me apparently to make the photo and my paper the same size. We're stuck with having the picture of me there. So this is yeah. Cindy says that's helpful the way you're showing the directions on the cone. Yeah, you can look that up. Pine cones, pineapples, sunflowers, they're all built the same way. Okay, well, anyway, I'm going to have the reference photo and you can draw it however you want, but I just wanted to make it so that the red bauble would be kind of hanging in one area and the cones in another. So I'm just going to kind of do the same thing I did before with this kind of outlook, kind of like this. Okie doke. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to just start with my branch because everything's going to be hanging from the branch. And the branch is thicker. And it gets thinner towards the end. And I'm going to have it end up in a couple branchlets. Okay, so that's my branch. And it just gets smaller and smaller. And it's mainly going to be hidden by the needles. Okay, so there's my branch. And then the bauble, which here's a different one. This is a shiny gold one with a lot more details on it. kind of like the kind that would hang on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But we're just going to do the simpler round one. So I'm going to have it hanging from this branch, and it's going to have the little thread, and then kind of the gold cap. And then I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use this circle here. And you can get a cup, you know, from your, yeah. And yeah, you want the gold cap to be sort of the right proportion compared to the bauble. And then there's the little extra hook thingy. Yeah, and then there's the thread. So something like that. Okay. And I will switch back and forth. So that's, can you see that? So that's what we've got so far, is the branch and the thread and the gold cap and the bauble doodad. And then I'm going to add the oval. I'm just going to put those here. So they're tall. They're not as round. They're taller than wide compared to most pine cones that are more circular. And just to make it fun, I'll add another one here. And it would probably be bigger, closer to the base. These are going to be dark purple, so it doesn't matter if we see that pencil line. I'm trying to keep this pencil line light, especially because this pencil lead is a little bit too dark and can smear. Okay. And then we'll add the needles, but I'm not going to draw those in first. I'm just going to freehand those. Okay. All righty. So now the first thing I'm going to do is work in a few layers. So it's kind of nice when you think about a watercolor painting, if you have different areas you can work on and then let them dry, that's a good idea. So I'm going to work on my ornament here first, and then a first layer here and here, and then I can come back and do some more highlights on the ornament. Okay. Tell me in the chat box, is anybody following along? So I'm just going to keep this big for now okay. So anyway, the ornament. Now you can make it any color you want. Ours is bright red, kind of like these berries. And different ornaments have different shininess, just like an apple is shinier than an orange because an apple is smoother. Today, I actually thought about this when I was walking by in a neighborhood, and they had some really big ornaments hanging outside. And some of them were red and shiny, like the one in our photograph. And some of them were more of a matte, almost like a velvet. And so their highlights were very different. They weren't as sharp. Just like if you have a highlight on an orange, it's going to be more softer on the edges than a highlight on an apple, or certainly on like this shiny. See how sharp those highlights are, because this surface is very shiny and smooth. So it doesn't matter, you know, how you do it. But actually, I think I'm gonna, yeah, this lid thingy actually comes down, and I noticed there's a little doodad like this, sort of, just to make it more realistic. You know how it kind of clamps down? So can you guys see that? Do I need to bring this any closer? when I drop this down, then it's totally in my face when I'm talking to you guys. So you can't win for losing. Okay, anyway, so so I'm gonna paint, I happen to have gotten this gold metallic, like acrylic paint. But I noticed it's kind of cheap, and so it's not that opaque. And that's one of the things about paint, is one of the reasons that the more expensive ones are more expensive is because they have more pigment compared to filler. And so, on this last version, I used this gold paint, and I guess I'll try it again. And it's going to be pretty subtle, so I got to get rid of this line, else it'll show. But just for fun, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use that really thin brush wherever it went. Here it is. This is my script brush. Cindy says you can see. Okay. So I usually like to work on a painting from this way over anyway, since I'm right-handed. So that's a good place to start. And I'm just going to pour. Yeah, it looks prettier than when you paint it on. Maybe I need several layers, but I'm just going to use the lid here. Now, if we had more time, I would have painted a background color, because if we're going to put snow, the snow won't show very well against the white. But, you can always add paint later. That's what I did to my practice piece I showed you. Yeah, so notice how the gold lid is overlapping the circle, because it does kind of clamp down on it. It's not completely on top. But it totally depends on what angle you're looking at it as well. So I guess this looks okay. I guess if I put a couple layers of this, it would be more opaque. But yeah, that's why you pay more for better paint, is that it's got more. Okay, how's that? All righty. Tell me in the chat box if you're following along or if you're just watching for fun. Okay, I'm just going to set this aside in case I have time to add more. And I'm going to get some of this off of here. All righty, so then we're going to do the red. But I want mine, I'm going to do a couple layers of this. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of a yellow, so that when I lift off some of the red highlights, it'll kind of be a warm yellow, like it's reflecting the lights, the other lights of the Christmas tree. And since yellow is, closely related to red, it'll look just fine. It's always a challenge with watercolors to make them dark enough. So that's why I often do several layers, and I'll do what's called glazing. So if I let this dry a bit and then put the red over it and lift out some highlights, it's going to be more of a dynamic red than just throwing red right on there. Okie dokie. So now I'm going to do the branch, and let me go back to the picture. There we go. So now the branch is a kind of a purplish gray, kind of close to the cones, but kind of more subtle. And plus, most of the branch is going to be covered up with needles. So I'm just going to do a really subtle grayish. And again, since I made, since I took the time to make these swatches, I'm just going to use this kind of color down here because it's very close. And the branch is round, so it would be a little bit of shadow on the bottom part of it too. So anyway, let's do that. So I'm going to, yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm kind of lifting it, twisting and lifting and making it thinner as we go. There, that's nice. So it'll mostly be covered. And yeah, the branch is a little bit round and it's a little bit shaded in the bottom. So I could add a little bit more grayish. And a lot of times I'll mix the color and then I'll look at it a bit on a scrap piece of paper. I always have lots of scraps. Oh, great, Jackie, you're trying to paint at the same time. Yeah. So I'm just going to make a little bit cooler, darker version and just put a line along the bottom. Again, most of this is going to be covered with needles. So we just need to do a suggestion. And remember, we're just having fun here. This is Christmas time. I'm not trying to have us do any kind of high-tech, botanical illustration. I just want us to have fun. So now let's do the purple cones. And like I said before, they're going to get texture with the white charcoal pencil. Jackie, do you have a white charcoal pencil? Or one of these other opaque sorts of pencils? There's always lots of different things you can use. I need to sharpen my pencil. So anyway, we just want to put the local color of that really nice purple. And if I would have just taken a purple right out of my palette, it is almost black. This is the strongest purple. So it's really easy to go overboard. And, when you've got a color, you're going to think to yourself, oh, do I want a kind of cooler version, a warmer version? Like, is my purple more leaning to blue or is it more leaning to red? And there, I think, is the purple I want to use that I made. So it's more leaning towards blue. So it's cooler. And that makes sense also because we can just think artistically, that it's winter time. So we want to make this cool and it'll contrast nicely with the warm of the bauble. And this cool blue will also go well with the cool green needles. They're not a warm yellowish green, although a little bit maybe on the tips, but they're more of a bluish. So we just always want to think about that. So now I'm just going to paint these and the fewer strokes you can make, the better. And that also has to do with the size of your brush. So the more you kind of play with something, the more streaky it can become. And you always want to use the largest brush you can for the job so that you're not fiddling with things too much. The more you fiddle with it, the more it'll just start lifting. Let's see. That's pretty close. I might want to go back and add some more, but again, if I went back now, it would just lift it. So that's why it's nice to work in a few different areas. So I can just let that dry. And yeah. So I'm going to go back to this. Jackie says you have white Derwent Intense. Oh, Inktense pencil. Okay. That may or may not be opaque enough, but you can just see. So yeah. So now I'm going to add more of my red to the bauble, and you see there are some highlights here. And those, you can put kind of those anywhere. It just depends on where you're thinking where those highlights are, because there's either sun or lights from the other lights on the tree. So it's not rocket science. You can just put them wherever you want. So I am going to, again, look at my my swatches I made, and again, I don't have to, this isn't rocket science. I'm not having to make it exact. These can be any color that you want, but this is sort of a cool red. So, I can use a couple of these. And yeah, I think I might use this magenta. And let's see, where am I here? And I'm going to kind of leave those highlight areas. And I can always lift those back out too and soften them. This is a little challenging because this is supposed to be super smooth. So when you're glazing, you want to just go, again, as smoothly as you can without scrubbing, because the scrubbing will lift the yellow. And I'm just, yeah, I just see that there's some more shadow kind of in the middle here. And then I'm just going to soften. So you probably can't tell in the video, but this red is just a lot more beautiful and dynamic than if I would have just taken my red out of the palette and painted it on. And I could make this bigger again. And then I can lift a bit. And again, how sharp your highlights are have to do with whether the metal part of your ornament is shiny and soft, or hard or soft. Yeah, and then I think I'm going to go a little bolder and get this dark purple. I think my paints are starting to get a little old. They've been in this palette for quite a while. I can feel they feel a little bit gluey, like the gum arabic is sort of separating from the pigment. All right. And I could play with, I've got a few different of these reds, and I can just add a bit more wet on wet if I want to. But again, I don't want to scrub. Else I'm just going to lift. But it is nice wet and wet to have these colors kind of soft. Now that's a little bit dry. We don't want that. And I could, yeah, if I wanted to, I could just cover all this up and make this a little bit softer. Or I could take a piece of paper and do a little lifting of my highlights. Kind of like when we did the Northern Lights the other day. If you remember, here's my painting from our Northern Lights. And when you have some really darks next to lights, it really accentuates that contrast. It's really cool. So I like to do that. oh, it's funny that there's a reflection from the light and it is looking like really shiny. That's interesting. So, yeah, anyway, I should not mess with that much more. I'm going to let that dry. How we doing? So I'm going to come back to that again. But again, how sharp the contrast is relates to what the surface, what your bauble is made of, okay? And so, like, here's another practice I was doing. If I was to lift out some really sharp highlights, this doesn't want to do this that well. Or, you know, if I was going to do a highlight with the pen, that really sharp highlight is going to make something look a lot shinier than if the edge of the highlights are softer, like the material that the bauble is made up of is softer. Does that make sense? Okay, let's let that dry a bit. Let's go back and add our, actually, no, I'm going to do my needles now. And what I feel like doing is, I'm going to make a little pile of green in this little container so that it's just quicker for me to kind of go like this. Otherwise, if I'm using this big one and going back and forth, that can drip and take longer. So anyway, I usually use a lot of these little ramekins of different sizes, not only for, you know, making that circle we did, but, you know, I like to have various ramekins like this. So I'll have a ramekin of water that I have for cleaning my brushes that have light paint and versus dark paint like this. So I don't have to constantly fix it. And these are nice and sturdy. They're not gonna tip over. And also you should never use like coffee cups for your water, because I know half the time I think it's my tea and I'm gonna drink it. So that's not good. So anyway, I like these ramekins, super sturdy. So I'm just gonna make a pile of this green, and let's go back to our, boy, it's already 12:42. So yeah, so just kind of noticing how long those needles are. 1, 2, 3. I'd say they're about a quarter of the length of the cone. So that's kind of a good way. They're also maybe 3 times longer than the width of the stem. So that's something good to think about. And so yeah, I'm going to make this kind of cool bluish green, and maybe I might add some warmer green highlights afterwards. So I'm just going to make a pile of it, and I'll use my thicker brush to make a pile of the paint. And then my script brush to actually paint with, because yeah. All right, so I got this pile of green here. And my script brush, I think my script brush is actually too small. I think I need a different brush. I have way too many brushes here. What about that brush? And, you know, again, it's good to practice. So actually, that one will work well. So I always have lots of scrap paper. Okay, so we're thinking about our, we're just going to start adding these needles. And they go all the way around. I'm not trying to be too fussy. A lot of them are kind of angled towards the front or the tip of the branch. And some of these ones on the top are kind of angled up. And some are shorter because they're more, you know, foreshortened. pointing towards you. It's okay that I'm not really done with my cones. They kind of will be more subtle where they're hidden behind the needles anyway. So what kind of Christmas trees do you guys have? Or is it a plastic tree? Now notice the needles on the very end. They're a lot shorter, and they completely cover the branch. So I wanted to make sure I made those shorter. So, you know, there's several species of pines that are used for Christmas trees, several spruces, several firs. And part of our series, this 12 Days of DrawPaintMas, one day we're going to do just simple, fun silhouettes of different species of popular Christmas trees in watercolor. So when I was a kid, I had a really unique kind of Christmas tree. So I don't know if any of you guys have had anything different than spruce or pines or firs or Doug firs. Anybody have a weird Christmas tree they've used before I tell you mine? I'm going to make these needles longer towards the base of the branch. So my weird type of Christmas tree was a manzanita. Does anybody know what manzanita is? Actually, yesterday I saw a manzanita blooming. They have beautiful little delicate pink bell-shaped flowers, and that's what I love about this part of Southern Oregon is it's spring even when it's winter compared to Central Oregon. But so when I was a kid, I lived in the California foothills where we had lots of manzanita, and it was really pretty. It's got bark like a madrone tree, which is like red and shiny, and the leaves are round and shiny. So I thought, wouldn't that be a fun Christmas tree? And when I was a kid, I had horses, and I lived in a really rural area. So I kind of pretended I was like Laura in Little House on the Prairie. And I went out with a saw and a rope with my horse, and we went out into the forest. And I cut down a little like 6-foot tall manzanita and brought it home to be our family Christmas tree. And it was so beautiful because of the shiny leaves, and it had really open architecture. So you could really see the pretty ornaments. Because sometimes on regular Christmas trees, they're so thick, you know, that you really can't see. I'm kind of getting overboarded here. I think I'm going to give a little bit more variety to these needles. I'm going to add a different color. Just make it more interesting. I'm adding some kind of bluish needles. Yeah, that manzanita was so pretty. And my horse was so tolerant of letting me tie it to the saddle and pull it back to the barn. It was probably only like, I don't know, a quarter mile. I do notice that these, yes, anyway, for fun, Jackie, you said you made a tree from fused glass about 3 feet high to hang in our window, complete with electric lights and ornaments. Oh my gosh, wow. I'm going to add a little bit of fun yellow because I'm just noticing some of these needles look, maybe they're just reflecting some sun or something. But just to give some visual interest here. Yeah, some of these needles, maybe they're a little bit warmer because they're pointed up. Okay, that's it. Okay, let me go back. I need to go back. These are too light, I decided. So it's really easy to be a little bit too wimpy. And especially maybe to make these more rounded, maybe I'll just do this a darker bluish purple. And I definitely want to make it thicker. Yeah, I think I'll go bold like that. And again, just one. I'm going to pull this color over. That's right. Oh, that's right. I noticed that these cones kind of have a little top to them, like that. Sorry, I didn't add that before. Now I'm just going to clean my brush and pull that color over a bit. That's probably a little bit closer. A little bit better. Okay. All righty. Now, let's see what else. I can make this bigger again. So it still needs some work. I think I want to be a little bit bolder with my ornament. This shiny part, it's if you have super shiny parts, one way to show shininess is to have really hard edges between your highlights and your shadows. And I can actually add some white, maybe a little bit too here. And then I'm going to add some dark. Maybe I'll just use some of this dark purple. And I need my glasses. Where did I put my glasses? I'm blind. Adding some really hard highlights there. That doodad. There, I think that helps a bit to make that more shiny. You got to really go bold with the shininess. And there's a tiny bit of cast shadow in the edge here. Yeah, I think that looks better. And then one more layer, just a little bit bolder with my red. Which red should I use? Yeah, let me go bolder with that. Oh yeah, that's pretty. And again, I don't want to scrub this. It'll lift that other stuff. And just a little bit more. It's got to be thicker. Each layer you add. Yeah, I think this purple is old. Has to be thicker than the one before, else it'll lift. Oops. I can always fix that later. Softening that highlight a bit. Anyway, there's, okay. I like that. Gotta fix that. Okay. Let's go back and finish the cones. And I'm going to add those highlights we talked about, where the spiral pattern. Remember we talked about that? So there's going to be, let me get this bigger again for you. Or no, sorry. There's too many buttons. Yeah. Okay, so the shallower, we're going to make those subtle highlights on the cones that are sitting on top of the spirals. So there's going to be a shallower spiral here. So it's kind of an arc. And they get kind of wider in the middle and a little bit narrower at the base. So shallow spirals, a little bit wider in the middle, a little bit narrower towards the base. Alrighty. And then the other way is the steeper spiral. A little wider in the middle, narrower at the base, steeper spiral. Okay. Yeah, those are pretty pale. I definitely need to be bolder with my purple, don't I? But we could do that, I guess, some other time, maybe. I don't know. Kind of make it more. Anyway, maybe that helps a little bit. Okay. And then some more highlights. Now I could switch it up and have some fun with this bright white, bleed proof white to wrap it up because I don't want us to take longer than an hour. And you can keep working on this on your own. But let's be a little bit bold with this. And I'm going to put some more highlights and some snow. So just some more highlights in the middle here. And highlight here maybe. How's that look? Oh yeah, that helps a lot, doesn't it? Now you could add some snow if you want. I think I'm not going to. I was a little bit frustrated with how my snow turned out. And so then I added some green background for the forest to let the snow show a bit more, but it still looked kind of pale. It should probably be a darker background to really show the snow more. And I just wasn't that happy with my snow. So I'm not going to do that. Sometimes when I'm going to do something I'm worried about, I'll take a photo of my artwork. So at least I'll have I'll have one version of it. And then I'll maybe keep working on it. Anyway, yeah, I think that highlight worked. Yeah, see, that makes it look really shiny, doesn't it? Okay. And for some reason, I still just want to make this darker. Oops, I got some of this. Really want to make this rounder. Because everything can't be bright. Just like I always say with rainbows come after the rain. You have to have some contrast. Everything can't be totally bright and beautiful. So I think when I add a little bit of that dark purple, that's going to help the shininess come through a bit. Maybe I'll soften that edge a little tiny bit. But again, not messing with this too much, being pretty subtle. I like that better. Okay, let me see. Well, that's a pretty good start for less than an hour. I definitely need to be bolder on my cones. These are really dark purple. Yeah, tell me what you think. And it is hard to draw and teach and paint at the same time as well. But I'm pretty happy with my bauble. I could always add a little bit, some highlights with the white pencil too, if I wanted to be soften that edge. Okay, anybody else want to say anything in the chat box before we leave? Oh, I think I need to put this away. I'm gonna clean that up. Okay, so yeah. So anyway, I'm not too shy to make mistakes and make things look, maybe not as good as they could, but that's a pretty okay start. And I had a lot of fun kind of just thinking about the shininess of the bauble. But again, it will be more or less shiny depending on the surface. So like, for example, these berries are round, just like this ornament, but their highlights are a lot softer on the edges because it's a different type of surface. Just like this little Santa Claus, he's got some red fur buttons, and since these are really furry, the highlights are really, really subtle, right? So your highlights and your shadows have a lot to do with what your surface is made up of. Let's see. Cindy says the fir branch is really great. The bauble shows the shine. It's a nice holiday scene. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, again, I think I'm gonna work on these a bit more and be a little bit bolder with them. But I hope you did, have fun kind of seeing, especially how those spirals worked. And the spirals aren't showing as well either because the purple's not dark enough. See, I was a little bit bolder with this first version, and I added some snow too. But again, I'm not sure if it really looks like snow, but I do like my new bauble better than this one. And these are two different kinds of papers too. This was the hot press, and this is the cold press. So everything's going to look really different. Okay. Jackie says, luckily you have provided the ability to try that multiple times. Great examples. Yeah, I mean, I played with this. I played with this. I was doing some swatches, just like with my Northern Lights. I did several versions of those. So the more you practice something, the better it's going to look. Okay. Well, I think, it's a real iterative process. And, art and being creative is a process, and it's not just the product. And it's just fun to think about it and break it down a little bit scientifically. Again, thinking of your brush strokes, your size of your brush, your type of paper, making swatches, just breaking down the process. Okay, so tomorrow is the Arctic hare, and that is our largest rabbit in the Americas. It grows up to 4 pounds and is snow white, except it's got black tipped ears. And if you're in my Nature Notebook Club, you got high resolution handout of all of 12 photos from this series. And if you want to join that, I've given you plenty of links in the past to join that if you want. But anyway, yeah, tomorrow's the Arctic hare. It's a really big rabbit that stays really warm. It lives in the same habitat as the balsam fir, and it seeks shelter under these trees as well. So that one I will be doing on toned paper, some gray paper to look like the gray granite rocks that will contrast nicely with the white rabbit. And I think I'll do the rabbit in black and white charcoal pencils. That'll be really fun. Okay, well, I hope to see you tomorrow again at noon. And thanks so much for joining me. And if you're enjoying these, please click the share button that you'll probably see below this video on both Facebook and YouTube, and share it with other nature-loving friends who want to learn more about nature while they're also practicing some drawing and painting. I'd really appreciate that. Okay, well, thanks. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you around. Happy holidays. Bye-bye.